Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel and to today's video all about AFM professional skills marks and some top tutor tips about everything you need to know about how it's going to be placed into the examination. Now today I'm delighted to be welcoming onto the channel again Sunil who's going to walk and talk us through all the key facts and figures and things and everything about the professional skills that you need to be aware of. So Sunil, feel free to introduce yourself. Who are you? And welcome to the channel again.
James, thanks very much for welcoming me back. So, I'll be brief. I'm Sunil Bandari, been a tutor too long. Let's put it that way, right? Started way back in '86. And, I love teaching FM and AFM. So, absolutely love those. You've talked about the professional skills. James, it's hugely important. When we've gone to 20% now in professional skills, 10 marks in question 1, 5 marks each in question 2 and 3, I think it's massively important now that students have got to ensure that when they're preparing for this particular paper, September being the first one, that they're comfortable with what they're going to be facing. We know they're split between what is going to be communication, analysis, evaluation, acumen, and skepticism. Now, we know all 4 are tested in Q1, and only the latter 3 are tested in Qs 2 and 3. So I don't want to use I don't really want to use positive and negative. I'll just like to say I think they're split into 2 categories. Let's put it that way. I'll call them category in A and B rather than positive and negative, right? So if I go down them, if I look at, for example, communication, and I always call that comms, if you don't mind, just easier, right? If you look at comms, that's in Q1, and to me, in the old syllabus, that used to be worth 4 marks. Now, we don't know how much of the 10 is it going to be worth now, right? But I think any educated guess would say it's going to be worth at least 4. So what do you have to do to be absolutely, you're going to get all 4, if it's 4, yeah? Well, you've first of all got to make sure you've done a heading on your report, report to the board of directors. You've got to make sure you've done an introduction. You've got to make sure you've done a conclusion. And the partial new one, but it's not really new because everybody does this anyway. You've got to subhead your report. Yeah. Okay. And then your calculations are automatically in the appendices being the spreadsheet. But here's something they emphasized. They expect candidates to use the shortcuts. They expect them to use NPV function, IRR function, MIRR function, and as we discussed recently, the new BSOP calculator. Wow. I've been advocating that for ages and ages and ages, and I'm so happy they brought that in. So I think that goes into sort of pot 1. Pot 1, right? Okay. Also going into pot 1 is analysis and evaluation. So analysis and evaluation for me, analysis is you have the data in front of you. You've got to take that data, and this applies, remember, to Q1, Q2, and Q3. You've got to take that data and you've got to put that into your analysis. Now, to me, I'll look at that and go to myself, well, you've prepared well, right? You're going to see data and it's going to say, should we evaluate this project? I think you're going to think that's NPV or, here is an entity we're thinking of buying. Right, that's going to be business valuations. If you see, well, here looks like a load of information on exchange rates, well, that's going to be risk management. So the analysis, right, should really be, if you've prepared all the skills, you should be able to look at the data and do the analysis in the spreadsheet area. Fine. So I'm going to put that into pot 1. I'll put that into pot 1. Right. Okay. Then you've got what is going to be the evaluation of that. Now, the evaluation is to flick across into your word processor. And this is one point I would like to really emphasize to all students. And this is even a change from me, a change from June to now, even for me. I would sometimes have advocated in June exam or before, James, that if you've done a calculation, then it says to do a small comment. You know, that the markers would have allowed if you did that in the spreadsheet, it's fine. But I would say very strongly now, don't do that. Don't do that. Make sure your comments are in the word processor.
Word document,
right?
Yeah,
in the Word document. In the word, they call it the word processor on theirs. Yeah?
Yeah.
So as long as it goes into the word processor, right, and that means only calculations in your spreadsheet. So your evaluation is purely based on what you've done. And I would please say to the candidates, please say to students, don't get worried if you got the numbers wrong. Because you get own figure rule marking, you'll be fine. Yeah, just make the conclusion based on what's in front of you. Yeah, and also keep an eye on what you think you might have missed. Right. So I put that into pot one.
Okay.
So I've got that's so to me, comms, analysis, evaluation, they're in pot one. What I call pot two, acumen and skepticism. Now I think pot two is, I never like to use words difficult and hard in my lectures. I like to use the words interesting and fascinating. They are the, and I would put these more in the interesting and fascinating category. Right? Because with acumen and skepticism, to me, this is the rule of, first of all, acumen, you've got to have some business knowledge. You've got to understand some business area. So I'll give you an example of what I mean by acumen. I'll give you a small illustration, right? There was a past question which has been revamped, right? It's a question called Riviere, just from the top of my head, right? Yeah. And it's a question to do with, right, a food company based in Europe is deciding to export this food or manufacture food abroad outside the EU. Right? What are some of the risks they're going to face? Now, one of the risks, right, is, for example, labeling. Just one of the risks we face, because we know that in Europe and in the UK, we have a traffic light system. We know what that is. Red is not so good for your health. Orange is sort of medium, and green is perfect for your health, right?
I won't ask what you're having for your dinner this evening, but carry on. It's all right.
Yeah. But then, right, I'm saying if you go abroad, first of all, the country you're going to may not have that labeling system in, but other countries have a labeling system which may also be similar, but they mean something different. If you, for example, went to India, red means meat and green means veg. Now, that's what I mean by acumen. That's only an illustration of it, but that's what I mean by it. You're going to have a little bit of that little business knowledge to make sure that you put those points in. So I put that in pot two.
Okay.
That's going to require a bit more practice. That's going to require you to make sure you look very carefully at the way answers have been presented. And then skepticism. This, to me, is the best illustration of it. All AFM students, either doing it for the first time or a reset, right, would say, right, the classic questions are assumptions. What are the assumptions behind the model? Yeah, or assumptions behind your MPV or your valuation. What I would say to you now, write 2 sentences. I would say to any candidate, write 2 sentences. Number one, state the assumption. And number two, write a subsequent sentence where you are basically questioning whether that assumption is valid.
Why is it dodgy? What could go wrong with it, sort of thing?
What could go wrong with it? Yeah. And if you just use the 2-sentence rule for things like assumptions, where you're saying this is the fact and this is what is going to be where it's an issue, you're going to pick up those marks. You're going to pick up those. So that's where I see the 2 pots. I see pot 1A as being, I don't think it's going to be, that should be not too much of a challenge. While I see pot B, you're going to need to do a lot of practice. You're going to have to see a lot of answers, in that way. I know what I've done with all my answers that I've produced is for every sort of answer I've used, word comment, and I've actually highlighted this is where I think is acumen, this is where I think is skepticism. you know, in the 5 marks in Q2 and Q3, they're marking out of a maximum of 7. So you've got opportunity to score there.
Definitely.
Do I think it's positive for the students? Yeah, absolutely. I think
Oh,
it's really positive for the students. Somebody said to me, is it true that you're now, in effect, getting 25 marks worth of time to do a 20-mark question, for example? Yeah? Or 50 marks worth of time to do a 40-mark question? Yes. Yes, that is true. But the quality then has to go up.
Exactly. Yeah, and just to add context for anyone who maybe this is the first thing you're hearing about this, as to you've got 80 technical marks, 20 professional marks, and the professional marks from the webinars I've been on to they are embedded within the actual question. So it's all about all the brilliant stuff you've just gone through there, Sunil, about it's embedding it. And the word, I don't know, you've probably heard it from the webinars you've been at, it's a holistic approach. It's a case of we want it to be more that the student is going to be like in a real workplace, how they would actually portray their answer to a manager, to a director on there as well. So what would you add to that from your experience?
I would say this. You know, when I look at a report that's been written, or a colleague of mine who's a marker who marks some marking for me, right? What we would say is, so you presented me with a report. Okay, I know it's to the board of directors, right? But I go, you presented me with a report. Does it answer my requirements? Would I pay for it? Would I pay for it, right? So if I would pay for that report, even though it's an internal report, if I would pay for it, you know, you've got to imagine it's been done externally, right? If I would pay for it, it's worth a pass.
Right.
Worth a pass, right? If I wouldn't pay for it, it can't be worth a pass because I'm going, sorry, I'm not paying for that. That isn't quite what I wanted, right? Or it didn't answer. And that's how I would look at it. I would look at it in that way. Would you, if you present that to a client, right? Imagine that the board is a client. They're not, but imagine, would they pay for it? And if they pay for it, it's worth it. Then it's going to be worth a pass.
I think that's a really good way of putting it actually on there. And the other question, which before we've done this recording, I get from students now is, James, you've got to ask Sunil, because I need to know this, time management for the AFM exam with professional skills now being embedded. What's he recommending from a how many minutes per mark perspective, or how are you balancing it now with time involved in it?
I've always been, right, a crazy man on timing, right? Because I've always changed the rules on this, right? And I haven't altered my rule on this, right?
Okay.
My view is always, you know, I use an approach called 48, 47, 10, 40, 50. That's my I'll probably a little bit different on the last bit, but 48, 47, 10, 40, 50. What do I mean? That people forget that Q2 and 3 are worth exactly the same as Q1. And the Q2 and 3 have less to test in it. It's only going to be one, maybe 1.5 topics. Yeah. Less to digest, less exhibits to read. Yeah. So my view is you do Q2 or Q3 first, 48 minutes, one of them, finish it. Yeah. Then you got to do the other one, 47 minutes, finish it. Think in your head, I've got to get a minimum of 30. I've got to get 15 and 15, minimum target. Get 30. You got to Q1. This is the hardest skill. This is the hard skill, right? I mean, I've got a video on it on YouTube. It may help, right? Can you do the Q1 written before the numbers? You can. 100% you can. Yeah? You can pull the data from there and do a report.
Yeah.
And do all the other written part. And you need 10 minutes to read Q1. That's, you got to get used to doing that. So 10 minutes to read it, include the requirements first and then the exhibits. And you got 40 minutes to dispose of the written, all of it. And then you do the numbers last of all. And the reason why you do the numbers last of all, because that clock is on in the corner. And as whether you want to finish it, you know, you're probably not going to finish it, you know, unless you lose Hamilton, you're not going to finish it. So you go, when the clock goes, the flag's gone, it's over. But you would have done enough of the paper to pass. And if you've got two lots, 15, 20, 30, you've got the 10 professional marks from Q1, that's 40. You've then got to score basically 10 out of 40 to pass. I think that's not too, out of the 40 technical.
Yeah.
I don't think that's too difficult.
Well, it's a
And that's what I would do.
It's a tricky exam. I mean, the pass rate's what, around about 35% ish, maybe a touch
Oh,
lower.
it's moved up. No. That's a good thing. If you look at AFM, it's been the either number 1 or number 2 global pass rate for the options, and it has been consistently at that level. And I would expect that to continue to. In fact, I expect it to rise. Actually, I expect it to go up. I think that CBE and the CBE skills and AFM have been like a marriage made in heaven. I'm going to say a bit like me and my wife, Rita, if you don't mind saying that, right? So I'm going to say that. And also I'd say that now the professional skills are coming in because they're asking you to shorten the calc sum, CBE, the BSOP calculator, being an illustration, right? You're going to have more time to do the typing. Big difference, I think, between a candidate and me, right, is they can type quicker than me. They type more than me because they're used to doing that, right? You know, I'm not saying my typing's bad, but it's certainly not as quick as these guys will be. These guys and gals will be. So I think that it will go up. It's been ranked at either it's ranked at 1 or 2 again with tax. Those are the 2 dominant papers in the what, and I don't know why the others are or aren't. I can only talk about my paper. I know in my paper why it's around there.
But just to add to that as well, for anyone who's just coming on to AFM for the first time, the principles of apply back to the scenario, show all workings, be detailed on it, are all paramount and big reasons for you to pass. But the other thing from the professional skills point of view is, what if English isn't your first language? Is another question I've got. Is spelling going to be a massive factor in these professional skills? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the word processor, right? Not word doc, the word processor. That's why I'd urge students to use the ACCA word processor on the CBE practice program. Does not have spell check. It does not have spell check, right? So therefore, you don't know if you spelt it right or wrong. I mean, I'm the guy who wrote the business valuations article, which is on the ACCA website. How many times do I spell acquisitions without the C at the start? I forget the C. So many times I do it, and I wrote the article, right? So you know, I start AQ, right? And you, so they're not going to penalise you for spelling errors. I mean, I've said this previously. I've marked so many answers where they're talking about the CAPM model, and they put the CAMP model, and we all have a smile, and then we carry on marking and go, I know what you mean. I know what you meant. I know what you mean. And that's all that matters. You can't be, where you will be penalised, I'll have to say this, you know, if the examiners ask you to subhead your report and you've not subheaded it, then you're going to be penalised on communication. That's fine, but not on spelling and things like that. No.
Oh, all right. That's okay. Well, that's all right. It's just one of those questions that people and students will be asking, so they can feel free to put any comments or other questions at the bottom from myself and Sunil. But
may I add one point on that, James?
of course you can.
Work on the rule of 2 sentences in a paragraph maximum, and then put a white space between them. If you always work on 2 sentences in a paragraph maximum, 3 is just one too many, because a marker in AFM can only give you 1 of 3 marks. And I don't like the first one, I have to say it, right? 0, because they've read it but don't like it. 1, because it's okay, but he could have added some more. Or 2, they can't give more than 2. So therefore, if you've written 2 sentences, there's a high probability you're going to get 2 marks, but you may only get 1 if one of them isn't strong.
Yeah, well, it's all about it's just the game is still the same. We've still got to pass the AFM exam, but we've just got a different, you know, dealing of a hand now to play in the game.
Absolutely.
And I would try and see it as a positive, because they're looking for you to demonstrate what it'd be like in a real business scenario, laying it out correctly, how you communicate it. And I think analysing the scenario and understanding the requirement is even more paramount now, because if you don't answer what is being asked for, you're going to miss out on so many marks on that. What are your thoughts?
I agree. I think it's so important, James. You know, it's great with the word processor because you copy the requirements in at the top of your, and now when you got focus on that area, you got focus on that area. But like I said, It's the acumen and the skepticism that you've just got to just not take a chill pill, but you've got to think about it a little bit.
Yeah.
You really got to think about it a little bit, because
Yeah.
that to me is going to be the more challenging part of trying to get the scores on that basis. I mean, I always say I've got a grey beard because I'm of age, and that gives me the slight advantage of when I'm writing an answer. There, I've got the acumen and the skepticism skills, all right, but that's okay. But that's what students have got to develop. But looking at answers, they'll learn to develop them, and then practice them, they'll learn to develop.
Yeah, practice, time, make mistakes, and also I would say if you're reviewing your answers now when you're at home, be super critical in yourself and saying, out of the 4 key areas we've talked about in today's video, and I put all of Sunil's details and the links on it, ACCA's website below, so really study them. Say, where have I hit the nail on the head for each of those 4 areas, I would say.
Spot on. Totally agree with that. Absolutely, 100% agree with that. 100% agree with that.
Good stuff. You can tell I went to the AFM professional skills webinar because obviously my Friday nights just have so much free time on there, Sunil. But any final thoughts on your mind that if you had to sit the AFM exam with the professional skills, and just to be clear for the video, they start for September 2022 onwards, how would you approach it? What are those key factors and strategies that you would be implementing?
ACCA have put a specimen paper out, right? And it's got 3 questions: King, Tim, Colvin, and Belaine, yeah, which cover the main areas. And I think it's important that you start there. That is your kickoff point. And any candidate would start there, and that's your kickoff point. The 2 official publishers, who are Kaplan and BPP, have both produced exam kits which have been reviewed by the ACCA. And the questions have been revamped for the professional skills, right? So they've been revamped that way. But the starting point must be to look at what's happened in relation to the specimen that they produced. And that, I think, is a real kickoff point. There's also a very, very good video that the ACCA produced, which is on their website, on the professional skills inside AFM. Yeah. And I think that is a definite. I don't think it's to watch it once. I think it's to watch it more than once. It's to watch it several times. And it's certainly something, Jim, you said, what's the first thing to do? I would say that's probably not on the first thing. That's probably the last thing I'd want to watch before I do my exam. So to give me absolutely clear that I know what I'm going to be facing in that area.
Spot on, spot on. And then just to add for some more fun for your AFM, the usual technical articles, examiners reports. You've got a fantastic blog on content that goes out for it.
Yeah.
The more you just embed it into your studying as well, applying it to real life scenarios, you're going to get better. Along with, and I can't stress this enough, the CBE platform. Do all of your question practice on the CBE platform. Make as many mistakes as you can, and going into that exam, you'll be better.
Absolutely. Spot on. Couldn't put it better myself.
Good. Thank you, so that's very sweet of you. But guys, I'm going to put all of Sunil's details in the description of this video, all the links that we've talked about, along with the timings and those correct texts as well that you need to have for the up-to-date examinations. If you have got any questions for Sunil and myself, leave us a comment at the bottom. We love to read them. Let us know how you got on in the exam. And if you want access to all the free videos, you know what to do. Just subscribe. And of course, like the video. For Sunil is putting some great content today. I really appreciate it, Sunil. And thank you so much for coming on today.
And thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, James. It's
an absolute pleasure. Bless him, he's had a really hard time, everyone. Manchester United, his favourite team, haven't been performing. So he gave me a ring and said, James, I need cheering up. Can I come on the channel and we chat some AFM to take my mind off it? So he's smiling.
I'm making no further comment.
Well, on that bombshell, we'll see you next time.